broadcast. You're a part of the resistance.
The saga episodes of the Resistance broadcast are still in production, but we want to let you know that the standalone episodes of the Resistance broadcast have been put on hold. I'm just kidding. Welcome back, everybody. It is the Resistance broadcast. My name is John Hoey. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a shortened crew for you today, but we do have a fun show in store for you. We are going to update you on all the latest crazy news, kind of like that one I just told you about, hypothetically, about the podcast. We also have a rundown of a lot of great stuff, and of course, your questions. But first, let me bring in, as always, Myra Trunks himself, James Bainey. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I prefer the name Myra Trunks. Like, that's what all my friends call me, like, on a regular basis. And then every once in a while, they'll be like, your other name is James. Like, you use that as, like, an online handle, right? Like, James Bainey. Like, that's, like, right. My tag, my gamer tag. I use my name, James Bainey, but my friends call me Myra Trunks.
Yeah, also known as James.
Yeah, a.k.a. James Bainey, also.
Right. So like when you were in the hospital and you were having your son, they were like, where's the dad? They're like, oh, you mean Myra Trunks? He's down the hall.
Yeah, and they were like, what are you naming the baby? And I'm like, Red Bull 69.
Red Bull 69. All right. How's it going, man?
It is going good. I got a lot of projects that I'm working on. Resistance broadcast stuff is a big part. Obviously, always working, to bring out new material to the show. And also working on some stuff, some video editing and all kinds of other stuff outside, trying to pay the bills.
Absolutely, man. And Lacey is actually away. She is on Hoth right now, and she is doing her best to learn how to speak Tauntaun so that she can do an impression kind of like I do on this show. But she will be back next week, so it's a little more shirt-wearing Kylo this week, I think, on the podcast. And we'll see her back next week. So right now it's just me and James. We're going to get into it, and we're going to start off with those polls, James. I was surprised by this, and we had asked them out there, would you want to see live-action Star Wars movies made directly for the Disney streaming service? And half of the people said yes. With only 36% saying no and 14% saying maybe and commenting with their reasons why they said maybe. So initially, the fact that 50% versus 36% was yes to no, were you surprised that people want to see Star Wars movies directly on that streaming service, that pay-for streaming service?
Yes, I am surprised by this. On one hand, I want to say that I think people generally are going, yeah, sure. More. That just means more Star Wars movies. I think that maybe is where the yes is coming from, but I think I don't know where I stand on it exactly. I think I'm in the maybe category. I'm just really afraid that comes across like a low budget film or like a made for TV movie that's Star Wars related, and I'm like, I definitely don't want that. I want everything to be high quality and have its time put in, and that's spent some time trying to get things right. But
like a Lion King 2 situation.
Yeah, exactly. The 90s era of Disney sequels like Cinderella 3,
Simba's Pride.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think in this day and age it's getting easier to make lower budget, high quality things, and I think people are starting to understand it a little bit better. Like Netflix is starting to pull in some bigger name directors, and Amazon are actually starting to put some of their films in theaters, and they're getting Oscar nominations, Oscar wins with some of their movies. So it is possible that this could actually still be a good thing. I mean, why not make Rogue One and then just say, well, we're not going to release it in theaters. We're just going to release it as like something, and it's the same quality. It's the same movie. It's just on a streaming service. I hope that's what it is, if they announce that they're going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because you have to consider that there has to be still a full-fledged, tangible home video, I own this option as well. Because then you are literally saying, if you aren't a part of this streaming service and you're not buying our streaming service, you're not watching these new Star Wars movies. So
wait. You don't think that would be the plan?
No, I think it would be, but you have to consider that if you don't have the streaming service, you're going to be behind the 8 ball like a couple of months for them to release it on a Blu-ray or whatever, because they want that streaming service incentive.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly what it is. So
then you're going to have people filming these things on their phones, uploading it to the internet, people freaking out because it's easier to pirate it. It could open a big can of worms when you do it with the films. That's the only thing that I'm kind of confused about. And I don't think people who necessarily thought too deeply about, but I hate having things spoiled for me. And granted, I'm going to own this streaming service. I guarantee it. I have a child on the way. It's a Disney streaming service. But for the people who don't, I can see that being a concern.
Dude, I do totally understand where you're coming from, but remember, and I know the argument for this, but remember, that's exactly what Rebels was. Like, I don't have Disney XD. I would have to purchase cable in order to get that for quote unquote free. And they're like, well, it's free on TV, but it's not. You have to buy Disney XD, and I don't have cable. So I did have to buy Rebels in order to watch that show. So it'd be kind of similar. I understand that it's a movie, not a TV show, but at the same time, like, look at Jon Favreau's show. That's going to be on this. You know, somewhere down the line, you're right. They may offer that on a Blu-ray, but then again, like, they might not, you know? I mean, I don't know, but if they did do a movie, I don't know, man. That's tricky. They might make the movie exclusive and leave it as an exclusive thing, but then again, I could see it's on the streaming service for the first 3 months, just the same as in this movie is in theaters for 3 months, you know, or whatever. And then when we feel like it's totally done with that aspect of how we're going to make money, then we're going to let you own it otherwise. But the tricky part of that is that they already do own it otherwise. Like, why am I going to run out to Target to buy the Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie that I already own because I own the Disney streaming service?
Yeah, I'm talking about the people who don't own the streaming service. That's all I'm saying.
I get that. But, like, even Rebels or all these other shows aren't necessarily available, like, anytime you want unless you purchase them.
Yeah, I think there's always more trepidation about knowing about the movies getting spoiled for you, even if, like, they're not... But episode 10 or 11 or 12, you know.
So do you think they would do a home video release in conjunction with the release of the movie?
They would have to do that, I think. They would have to make...
That's totally new grounds.
I know, but they might have to do that. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I'm glad that you and I don't have to make those decisions. All we have to do is talk about it for an hour.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I would like to also know what listeners think. Like, please give us that feedback, and then maybe we'll have a deeper discussion on how we think they're going to handle live-action films if they ever go down that route.
I agree. And as far as this direct poll itself, here's what Elizabeth thinks, and she was the most liked comment, and her handle is @StoryBeth1, and she said, I'd rather see series for streaming. I want to keep the special event quality of the films. So she's, in other words, saying... keep the films on the big screen. That's where they belong. They deserve it. Let's do TV series on the streaming service. So that's kind of like, I guess, where a lot of us were thinking initially before these rumors started popping out about, oh, maybe they'll do a movie on there. Yeah. And a lot of people, most of the people who liked the comments were on board with what Elizabeth said here. So thank you, Elizabeth, for that.
It really isn't that surprising when those rumors start coming out. Like, it kind of is, but then it's also kind of like, well, yeah, like, look at all the other streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, and all that stuff. Of course they're doing original content, and we all understood that to be like the television aspect, but the original content that really suckered people into getting Netflix and stuff was the
Adam Sandler movies that he's making.
Yeah. Let's say
like
yes.
The Cobbler. Yeah. I'm still waiting for Happy Gilmore too, man. That's the only one I want to see.
What's the one? The Ridiculous Six. That's
Oh, yeah, I
that's
didn't
the
see
other.
that, yeah.
I didn't see it either. Yeah, but it was like one of the most watched Netflix movies ever when it was released. The Netflix owner came out and said that, and they're like, "Hey, you guys bash on these movies, but it was the most watched Netflix series single program ever when it was released." So
And probably the lowest rewatched Netflix movie ever.
Possibly, but it's like, of course they're going to put that on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're glad to shake their hands with Adam Sandler and do the deal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like James said, let us know what you guys think about what they may do about this. And like you were saying, maybe we'll open this up to a bigger discussion if we see different responses from you guys. But now it is time to get into the new... Oh, we don't call it that anymore? Oh, okay. What is this now? The Resistance Report.
Yeah, we're going to be calling
sounds
it
good
the
to me.
Resistance Report.
I was doing shtick there, dude.
Oh, no, I didn't think you knew. Since I write all the show notes, I figured that...
What? Get out of here. All right, so we're calling the news segment the Resistance Report now. And let's kick it off. James, what's going on this week?
It's the Resistance.
All right, so last week when we were doing the Newsnet, our big story that we were running with was the fact that Collider was saying all the standalones are on hold. Disney is reassessing how they're going to handle everything, and they've been put on kind of a hiatus, right? And then almost immediately, ABC News with Clayton Sandell turned around and said, no, our sources at Lucasfilm are telling us directly that the standalones are still in progress. You know what I mean? That Lucasfilm currently still has multiple projects, multiple films that they're working on, and are still in the process of being in active development, let's say. So this kind of set off the war of like, all right, well, who's telling the truth? Collider's trying to break a legitimate story, and then like ABC's maybe trying to cover it up. Or maybe it's just like Collider was never correct in the first place, and Disney's just clarifying that no, that's a bad story. Don't listen to that, you know? So it's kind of like a toss-up of who's telling the truth here. And John, let's talk about it a little bit. What's your opinion on this right away?
Well, my initial reaction is Collider was probably right because I heard there was some hesitation about this thing getting put out there because no one wants to ruffle any feathers. But a reporter's job is to report, and they have people who listen and watch them, could count on them for information. So I understand they're reporting that, and I think it was accurate. But then on the other hand, I also understand the clarification coming out of Lucasfilm, who told ABC News and our friend Clayton Sandell, who should be on the podcast in the future, by the way. So
yeah.
He's a great guy and can't wait to have him on. Well, hold on a minute now. You know, they said these projects are, being held off or whatever. First of all, we've never officially announced these projects, but we are here we can tell you this because this is what we want to reveal this moment, is that we still do have multiple projects in development outside of the ones that we have announced, being the Rian Johnson movies and the B and Dub movies, as we're going to refer to on the podcast, apparently.
Maybe.
So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll get into that later. So I think both are true, and they're both telling their truths from different points of view, not to be cliche. What do you think?
That's interesting. So let me clarify your take. So Collider may still be right that, like, say, the Obi-Wan film is being put on hold, but you're saying that Lucasfilm still could be working on a Salacious Crumb movie, and they're
Right.
like,
Well,
yeah,
hopefully.
that's another standalone that we're working on. So both reports would technically be true because some of the standalones are put on hold and others are still in progress.
And it doesn't even have to be standalone. They didn't say, like Lucasfilm didn't. They were careful with their word choices, and they obviously have brilliant PR people. So
Sure.
They said what they wanted to say and were careful in how they said it. Just like any legal statement, So they said we have multiple films in development. And they didn't say it's standalone. They didn't say it's episode 10. They didn't say it's another, group of series of films. They just said we have multiple projects still in development. And that makes sense to me because I remember when Pablo Hidalgo was way more active on Twitter, like literally talking about stuff that they're doing. He's like, yeah, I'm working on stuff right now that may see the light of day in 2028.
And Kathleen Kennedy's saying, we've got the next 10 years of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to refer to that too.
Yeah, so they could be technically right in what they're saying. But it was good, in my opinion, by ABC to kind of check that. So saying like, okay, as of June 2018, Disney and Lucasfilm told us there are still multiple film projects in development aside from what they've told us. So if in 5 years none of those come to fruition, we can go back to this and say, well, what happened here? Because you told us that no, we still have this stuff in development. So the time stamp is there, and I think that's important. So good job by Clayton and ABC to establish that as well.
Yeah, I gotta agree. My initial reaction to the story with ABC coming out was simply that, well, of course they're gonna say that ABC is owned by Disney, so it's kind of like saying, try to cover this story up. You know what I mean? Let's try to push this out of the cycle and just kind of say, that there's nothing going on at Lucasfilm that is on fire. But then again, like you said, the wording of all of this doesn't necessarily mean that either party is not telling the truth.
Right.
We gotta also remember, we talked a lot about this last week, that when we heard the news that all the standalone movies had been put on hold, but that all the ones that were officially announced were still on, that wasn't actually, you could kind of almost call it not news, because it's like saying hey, later I'm gonna make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then somebody says, yeah, it turns out he's not actually going to eat yogurt and he's going to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's like, yeah, well, I thought about maybe eating yogurt, but I never told anybody I was going to do that. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich was what I said I was going to do, and I'm still going to do that. It's kind of a weird example.
Then you were and then you ate that peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you're like, that was scrumptious.
Yeah.
I think it is important to put out there that, I think the statement that Lucasfilm put out that ABC reported on was also important from the angle that a lot of fans took the news that this stuff's being put on hold and scrapped for now, and that they're focusing on episode 9 only now, meant that there was a colossal, failure, and that they're shutting everything down, and that episode 9 is it for the foreseeable future. And I think what Lucasfilm and Disney wanted to put out there, probably regretfully because they didn't want to have to respond to anything at this point, because they didn't want that report out yet, probably, was just kind of refuting. It's like, no, we're still working on stuff, and we need to establish that, because before people run away with this stuff and say we're canceling everything, we need to at least establish we're not going to disagree with the report that things were put on hold, but we need to clearly put this statement out from us saying we're working on stuff.
So you think that Disney, or I should say Lucasfilm, either one of them, would be worried at all that people would hear the Collider news and turn around and say, oh, I guess that means the Rian Johnson thing isn't happening?
Yes. Yep.
Which I don't disagree with, because I think that was something that we kept feeling like we had to clarify. When I heard the news, very, very, very initially, I was like, oh, shoot, that means the Benioff and Weiss stuff is done. That means the Rian Johnson stuff's done. Then you actually read Collider's report, and they're like, no, it's all the rumored stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, so all the official stuff is still happening. All right, cool. But I think that Collider was very clear about that, too. So anybody reading that report, I don't feel like needed, oh, you heard about the Collider report, you read the Collider report. Don't think that means we're canceling all these other things, because the Collider report very clearly stated that all those things were still happening. It was these other films like Boba Fett and Obi-Wan that were potentially put on hold.
I think it was more trying to squash the game of telephone, where things roll like a snowball into a mountain, and when you hear something, especially if you don't like something, and you hear, okay, so Lucasfilm is putting Obi-Wan Kenobi and Boba Fett movies on hold. They're only focused on episode 9. and then someone tells someone, hey, they talk to their cousin, hey, do you hear Lucasfilm? They're not doing the Kenobi anymore, man. And they're only doing episode 9. That's it. And then that guy tells them, dude, there's only one more Star Wars movie coming out, man.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that.
So I think they just wanted to get it out there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the bulk of it. So, I mean, it's a like you're saying, it was a non-report, but it was almost like we need to say something to try and cool the steam a little bit.
All right, so let me ask your opinion right now. Do you think that there are movies in development other than Episode 9, Rian Johnson, Benioff and Weiss?
In development meaning, or do they have people writing treatments? Yeah. I don't think there's any kind of tangible physical productions or sets being created or casts being made or anything like that. I think there may be meetings with directors, meetings with writers, and story treatments being run through. So yeah, I think that. And some of that stuff may never happen, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, they just put... here's another story came out today that Indiana Jones 5 just got punched back another year because John Kasdan's allegedly taking over writing that movie. And Harrison Ford will be 78 when they film that thing. So who knows what's going to happen with that? It's still in development, though, you know? So I don't know, man. Indiana Jones and the early bird dinner special.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you in the sense that it's hard to not picture a world where there aren't people at Lucasfilm going, hey, I don't know, it was just at lunch and like I was thinking, what are you guys thinking about a movie where like we do like this and this and this? Like, what, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I mean, sure, that sounds cool. Write it down, get it, get some ideas together.
Yeah, it's hard for like us fans to really understand what the line drawn means for like in development. Like, could someone write, like, Pablo Hidalgo and, like, Kathleen Kennedy are at a Starbucks outside of Lucasfilm, and they're writing on a napkin, like, so Boba Fett takes this and runs here and does that. Like, does that mean it's in development? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and all that, and that makes sense. So, like I said, it's hard to, picture them, not thinking about things and calling it active development. It's just hard to also...
People can't say they're lying by the statement.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're in development. We got a lot of napkins around the office.
There are tons of little, sticky notes here and there. And yeah.
A Beautiful Mind. They go to the shed and there's just like all these sticky notes everywhere. Yeah. Like Russell Crowe's there writing Star Wars movies.
That's like the story group, make your space. Like it's just all these sticky notes everywhere. So I don't know, man. I mean, I think that's probably about as much as we can talk about, the information, because that's currently about all the information we have. We have another story actually that's a fun one, man. So we got Thrawn Alliances coming up, a new novel that is going to be the sequel to the Timothy Zahn Thrawn, let's call it a reboot, for that character.
Canon reinvestment.
Yeah. So we got Thrawn Alliances coming up, and we just recently actually got an excerpt. And not only, I want to talk about the excerpt a little bit, but I think one of the bigger things is this cover. What'd you think of this cover, man?
So the one with actually Anakin on it?
Yeah, sure. So we've had the one with, the white suit Thrawn, which is very typical of the other, and then we got the Vader in the back, and we're like, okay, yeah, that all makes sense or whatever. Then they release this other thing, and we're like, wait a minute, when does the story take place? Like, there's so many other factors. Just the image alone, we didn't even need the excerpt. The image alone just throws your mind into so many different tangents of what could this be? When is it happening? His lightsaber's blue. What does that mean? It's like...
So, yeah, and maybe I didn't look closely enough at this. Did he already have his scar? Like, do we know when to date that version of Anakin? Because his hair is longer, so you're thinking Revenge of the Sith era around there.
That's a good question. So, but I would definitely assume that this is post Clone Wars, because he in the excerpt he dresses himself as general. So you'd got to think that the Clone Wars have already begun and started.
Okay. The cover actually, and I don't want to be too critical here, but the first time I saw it, I thought it was a Photoshop. Like I thought. Because his head looked weird, like his neck was sunken into the armor. I thought someone just photoshopped Anakin into the regular Thrawn Alliance's poster. That was my first initial reaction.
And I don't think you're wrong, because I saw websites that were covering like, oh, Hayden Christensen back in the, in the zeitgeist of doing things for, and then like you actually read the article and the article is more like, no, it's just an artist rendition of what, that character, that actor who played him, and it's not actually like a photo or anything. I do understand what you're saying, but man, I'm blown away by this drawing though, because the longer I look at it, I honestly want to say like, I think that's my favorite image of Anakin Skywalker. It just says so much about him. Like, he's handsome, but yet he's confused. And I just feel like there's so much emotion in that one single image where he's like looking down, but also kind of looking up, and he's got the lightsaber. It's blue, so he's still good, but he looks so dark and just worn down. I don't know, just on the edge. Like, it just looks like a mighty warrior, but at the same time, like right before he turns to being just evil and broken,
You're trying to tell me that artist's rendition of Anakin is the best direction Anakin's ever gotten in that version of Anakin Skywalker.
Quite possibly.
Sorry, George. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but the image is great.
It is cool.
In my opinion. You want to talk about the excerpt, really?
Yeah. One other thing, though. Thrawn's face looks like they used the same exact face as the one with Vader. So maybe they just wanted to show the parallel between Vader and Anakin. But I'm pretty sure the two shots of Thrawn's face on both versions of the cover is the same. I just want to put that out there. I could be wrong.
Okay, so I kind of also think that if you were to take these two people and you were to stand them in the exact same position, and then you were to flash forward like 15 years, you know what I mean? Like, boom, like immediately flash forward and they're still standing in the same position. That's kind of the vibe I get. Although I'm not really sure if Vader's holding a lightsaber out or not. I can't remember.
It could also have been the artist just saying like, I'm not drawing another one for the cover. The excerpt. Why don't you start it off? Because you're definitely more of a book guy than me. So I have my thoughts on it, but I don't want to burst your bubble here. So I want to hear what you think about it first.
Well, okay, so the first kind of excerpt we got from this novel put us with both Thrawn and Vader being called in front of Palpatine, and he was like, "Hey, I want you guys to go on a mission. It's on this planet, and we get to see like how Thrawn and Vader interact with each other, where they're like pulling. I don't want to say pulling their punches, but they're saying things to kind of stab at the other person." So that might not be the exact term. So then we definitely got a placement that this was going to take, timeline wise, it was going to be like kind of around the Rebels era. Because
this was a few months ago, right? They put this out.
Yeah. So then this excerpt has young Anakin Skywalker as a general in the Clone Wars, and he just happens to be in this location that in the previous excerpt is the same place that that Palpatine was telling Thrawn and Vader to go to, because they had kind of met here before or something along those lines. So this is them first coming together, and so I think the story is going to be jumping between these two timelines. Here's them when they were first meeting and their dynamic when he was Anakin Skywalker, the general of the Jedi. And here is the dynamic now where he's the Sith Lord, and Thrawn is not supposed to know that it's Anakin, but you gotta imagine Thrawn put this together. He's put together the construction of the Death Star. He's put together like so many other things about, like, obviously in Rebels, like he's just like narrowing down where their like hidden bases are and stuff. This dude's like a genius. So there's nothing that says he hasn't put together that Anakin is Darth Vader, So I think this book's going to be great. Like the dynamic there.
I agree. Now, this excerpt, it didn't necessarily excite me, but I don't think that was its purpose. I do like the fact that they show Anakin kind of creeping inside Thrawn's mind to get an idea of who this guy was, and being almost intimidated by his ability to remain calm but be very calculated, and it almost felt like, and maybe there, you know, the additional descriptions as we read this book, it almost seems like Anakin was jealous that he felt like he should have been that way, but he couldn't control his emotions, and he was very raw and emotional, and that drove him more than anything. So I hope they explore that, where you almost see like Anakin wishing he was a little bit like Thrawn, more in that calm, cool, calculated manner. What do you think about that?
Man, I don't know that they'll go down that route, but if this, let's call it a prequel because it happens, you know, before what we understand as the original trilogy. If we kind of get a hint that the reason Vader is the way that he is, very precise, knows exactly how he wants to place his words and when to talk and what to say to get people to feel the most intimidated. If he learned how to do that via Thrawn, whoa, man, I'm getting excited. That could be a really cool story, and I think Timothy Zahn would have the ability to make that bold move. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I think Thrawn is kind of someone, you know, I didn't really get into the Thrawn trilogy, the Legends version of him, but I always kind of understood him a certain way.
Neither did I.
And my kind of outside opinion of him was that he did kind of have a similar strategy in the sense of he's always seems to be in control. And that's what we like about Vader, is that Vader was never dealing with Lando. Lando was dealing with Vader, you know? So,
now, would you say Vader used more like, I'm going to intimidate you through fear and power, as opposed to kind of chess himself to like checkmate you in a more calculated manner, though? I feel like there are different ways to overpower people, and I think that's where the dynamic is between these two here.
Yeah, I think that Vader has a little bit of that in him, but the way I think most people understand Vader is the sense of like, he says he lets you know how it's going to be, and if you start to argue, he'll force choke you, and he says, don't go down that path because I have the ability to kill you at any second. I'm that threatening, you know? And so I do think there's a little bit of a force there. Okay. Whereas I think Thrawn's power comes from him saying, this is the way it's going to be. And then when somebody fights back, they go, no, please, don't make me do this. I have all of your friends in a trap. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, it's not a physical thing. It's more of a, like, I really wish we didn't have to go down this route, but I'm willing to pull the trigger because this needs to happen. This is the way I'm doing things.
Yeah. He's more of like the Riddler and Batman.
yeah, I guess you could say that. Like, Darth Vader's more of like a Bane. But again, to say like the intelligence of Anakin and that might now be influenced by Thrawn versus in the EU, Thrawn being influenced by Vader. So I don't know. It's an interesting story.
I got to ask you this though. How are we pronouncing this thing, man? Because they go back and forth on it right there, and I'm just reading the word over and over again. So I want to know how are we going to pronounce his full name?
Well, I don't know. I've never really taken the time to try to actually say it. But here's the truth of it, though. If you want to know how it's pronounced, go listen to the audiobook. The audiobook is officially pronounced Leland Chi. I actually asked Matt Martin about this once before, how correct the pronunciations on the Audible audiobooks are, and he said that Leland Chi is in direction behind name pronunciations and things like that. So there's a pretty good chance that if it's pronounced this way in the audiobook, that's the correct way to pronounce it.
Also, I don't know if you saw, I retweeted Steven Stanton, who you guys know, he's been on the podcast in an interview with us, but he does the voice of old Obi-Wan in Rebels, and he's done Tarkin, among others, Radis. He showed, when Rebels was done, a shot of their phonetics on how they were shown to pronounce all these different places and names and stuff for Rebels. That was pretty cool. So they definitely, like you're saying, they definitely hammer that out to make sure there's continuity. Probably so they don't have any more Han situations like they had with Billy D back in the day.
But it worked out so well.
Yeah, I'm going to take a crack at this thing, dude, and I'm going to say Thrawn.
No.
Okay. Well, I
can't pronounce it, but I can tell you what you just said does not ring a bell at all compared to what I've heard in the audiobook.
Thrawn. Nerudo? Meath, maybe. I don't know.
I think the Mithron is right. Mithron. But here's the other thing, too, is that I think it's not even so much about, like, getting the syllables correct. I think there's kind of, like, an accent to it, which is the point of this excerpt. That, think of Shriwook. Like, yeah, right. Actually, what was it that I was just reading? In Most Wanted, there's a conversation that Han is having with a Wookiee prisoner, and he says something back to the Wookiee prisoner, and then the Wookiee prisoner repeats another line, and Kira says, I don't understand how that could possibly be a different word or a different sentence. He literally just made the same sound he just did a second ago. And Han's like, it wasn't exactly the same sound. Like, I understood the difference. So we think Wookiees all sound the same. I could understand somebody coming in and being like, no, you're saying my name wrong. It's Mithron, or whatever it is. And he's like, this is why I keep telling you to just call me Thrawn.
It's the Howard Stern. All right, now say WNBC. WNBC. No, you got to say it like this. WNBC. He's like, that's what I just said. I said the exact same thing. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting though, dude. I know we probably are up against it here on the Resistance Report, but I am intrigued. I am very intrigued with this book and what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. As far as like major stories though, I think the ABC thing was like probably the biggest thing this week. And we just had to take a second to talk about that Thrawn Alliances excerpt. But we don't really have a lot of time because we're pressing up against the clock a little bit. But we do want to cover some of these other stories. So if you don't mind, John, I'm going to send it over to you for the Scoundrels Rundown.
James, I don't mind, but let me warn you. I have a thermal detonator.
That's not a thermal detonator. That's just a rock.
I just turned it on. I just turned it on.
No, you just made a clicking sound with your mouth.
All right, I did. So what? Punch it. The Solo Blu-ray package details are slowly trickling out, including the store exclusive packages, and it sounds like the Target exclusive will offer Solo concept art, and the Best Buy 3-disc Steelbook will have the 4K disc, Blu-ray, and bonus special features. For the images of the cases and designs, head to StarWarsNewsNet.com and check out that article. Looks pretty cool. I'm interested. I'm definitely opting in for that Steelbook. Now, Star Wars The Last Jedi won 3 Saturn Awards last week. They won Best Screenplay for Rian Johnson, Best Film Actor for Mark Hamill, Best Editing by Bob Ducey, and Star Wars Rebels also won an award for Best Animated Series in its final season. So, hats off to Dave Filoni and his crew. And if you didn't get that joke, he actually had his hat off for one of the first times ever at the award ceremony. And you can own that award-winning series, Season 4, on Blu-ray DVD on July 31st. It's actually earlier than previous Rebel home releases. They were usually end of August. And the final season will come with exclusive, never-before-seen bonus extras on Blu-ray. And we are getting an early copy of that at Star Wars Newsnet for a review. So we'll have all the reviews of the special features on the website for you guys to see what you think about what we think. And a bit more to this Dave Filoni heavy rundown. For those of you heading to San Diego Comic-Con in a few weeks, if you haven't heard yet, there will be a Clone Wars 10th anniversary panel on Thursday, July 19th from 11:45 to 12:45 in room 6BCF. Now, we all know Clone Wars, the animated series, is awesome. The Star Wars presence at San Diego Comic-Con will likely be smaller than years ago due to Star Wars Celebration and D23, so this will be a must-attend for Star Wars fans at that event. Also, Lacey will be at San Diego Comic-Con, so be sure to say hi to her if you see her. For articles on all of these stories and more, be sure to visit StarWarsNewsNet.com every day to keep up to date on what's happening in the galaxy far, far away. That's it for this week's rundown. James, what do you say we fire up some Ask the Resistance questions and give them some answers? Chewie, get us out of here.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions this week, but there's only 2 of us, so we're just going to try to pick out a few that we think are fun and interesting.
You know, James, you had a good idea. We talked on the phone before we recorded tonight, and you were like, we should do a whole episode where we just answer questions, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So look forward to a full Ask the Resistance episode, maybe one time out of nowhere.
We should do it like the dog days of summer when news is slow, and we'll do a full push campaign for like a full episode to Ask the Resistance questions and stuff like that. I think that'd be cool.
And then maybe save some of the other news to actually build a story, a whole good episode again later, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, it is time to get into Ask the Resistance. As Lacey normally says, you've got questions, we've got answers. So let's get into it.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
This week, WickedRaz, at WickedRaz.
Boom!
Way to get your handle?
Yeah.
All right. Way to go. He sent us this question, and I'm gonna try to tackle this one first. After listening to you talking about the all-new trilogies, what makes a movie a Star Wars movie? Is it just the feeling or the vibe, like you said? Must there be a common theme like the Force in general or dark versus light? I honestly think this kind of got brought up on the Roka episode, I think. Of what makes a Star Wars movie to him. And I think really that gives the best answer is what makes a Star Wars movie to you. This is always like a personal question for a lot of different people. In my mind, honestly, as weak as it sounds, I think it's the production design. I think it's the costumes. I think it's the background. I think it's the way, the aesthetic of their clothing and the ships and the cities and the way that they the cinematography behind how they shoot ships flying through space and things. I think that if I was going into being a cinematographer or a production designer and of a new upcoming Star Wars movie, I think that's the thing is like, I just don't feel like I could shoot it the same way that other movies are shot. I feel like I would need to go back and be like, what makes a Star Wars movie a Star Wars movie? And that includes things like the wipes. You know what I mean? What other movie do you know that includes wipes? So when you're watching any other movie, imagine any other movie like Demolition Man or something, right? And there's like wipes.
Demolition Man.
I know, it's just like a random, the first movie I could pull out of my head.
Adam Sandler's The Cobbler.
Yeah, there you go. Adam Sandler's The Cobbler. You're watching that movie, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they go, well, we'll have to investigate that. And then there's like a wipe. You would immediately go, what is this, Star Wars? Like, it's because certain things like that make the aesthetic. But I'm not opposed to hearing people talk about, well, it's got to have the hero's adventure, or it's got to be this, or it's got to have the Force, or something like that. I think
so
all that stuff could be true too. I do. I think it's the aesthetic. I think it's the way it's shot, the cinematography, the production design, all that stuff. Because you put all that stuff in any other movie and try to tell me a story, I'm like, this feels like it's in the Star Wars universe. Even if you don't say Luke Skywalker, even if you don't say the Force.
Right. Which they're going to have to at some point.
Maybe, or like we've talked about before, maybe they call the Force something. Yeah, maybe. Maybe they call the Force something different. They've opened up those doors, you know? All right, Darth Hurricane, at Darth Hurricane. What is
now
this?
That's getting a handle right there, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's a Darth Hurricane. There isn't. All right, I'll take it.
Yeah. Exactly. Darth John, Earthquake was taken, so
I'm gonna send this one over to you. But Darth Hurricane said, How do you think the reaction to The Last Jedi and Solo will impact the story we see in Episode 9? Do you think we will see more fan service, more connection to other canons, comics, cartoons, stuff like that? What do you think?
All right, so I think, James, I think you and I should talk about this more in depth on Thursday.
Yeah, it's a broad topic.
But I will touch on it lightly here just to kind of, I guess, tease my thoughts, because I think let's make this our discussion for Thursday, honestly. You down with that?
Yeah, I'll have to see what I'm doing on Thursday. But
yeah, got to prepare.
Yeah, let me look at my calendar. Yeah, it says Resistance broadcast, so I think I'll be all right.
All right, James is showing jazz hands, everybody, so he's fired up about it. This is interesting. I don't think Solo, I will say, absolutely had zero impact on Episode 9, not only because it's not a part of the saga films, but just because I don't think there was anything creatively that people had a problem with Solo. From like the script was solid from the get-go. I think it was strictly a production issue. So you're talking about storytelling, I'm crossing Solo off the list. As far as The Last Jedi, that is interesting to me. Because, and I'll get into this more Thursday, but The Last Jedi came out about 2 months into the writing of the script of Episode 9. And obviously, you know, they were well aware of the reactions to that. And Rian Johnson sure as heck gave everybody the different Star Wars movie they wanted after J.J. Abrams' Episode 7. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see when they hit the tennis ball back the other way, what happens. I think there will be some level of impact in regards to the response from Episode 8 and how people, even who loved it like myself, received that movie, and maybe we want to get a little bit back towards True North. But so I will say I think there will be some sort of impact that we'll kind of get the vibes on with Episode 9 because of Episode 8, but I do not think Solo had any impact whatsoever. So thank you, Darth Hurricane. James, do you want to tease your thoughts on that, or do you want to just move on?
No, I do know. Do you want to answer? There's a little bit more to the story. Do you think we'll see more fan service? Do you think we'll see more connections to other canons? Do you think that JJ will open up the door to saying, like, you know, we've got a lot of books, we never really like touched on that stuff. Now I'm starting to see it grow since Force Awakens. I
don't think you're going to see. I think there's going to be a lot of fan service, and you'll see a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of nods. I don't think they're going to introduce too much of non-movie media into the story because they need to close this story out. And if you start trying to introduce things in a heavy way, it's going to get messy. So I think there'll be a lot of nods to things. Well, maybe we'll even get a Rebels nod somehow with Ezra being shot out into who knows where. And I think there's going to be a lot of that that the keen-eye fan is going to pick up on. But fan service, yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of that because I think J.J. Abrams, who, regardless of where the saga goes, whether it's 10, 11, 12 in the future, he's treating this as this is the final saga Star Wars movie. And I think he's going to do everything he can to round everything out as logically as possible.
Man, that dude has got to have some gray hairs, man, because the first time he comes into Star Wars, he's like,
talk about it.
He's like, I gotta, you mean I have to revitalize Star Wars after this many years, and after the prequels, I have to make people fall in love with Star Wars again? All right, fine, I'll do it. And then like a few years later, he's like, I have to wrap up 9 movies? Like, you want me to close out Star Wars like it's the last movie you're ever getting to Star Wars?
JJ is the clutch hitter that they're bringing up to bat, down by 2 runs with 2 men on and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th.
Gosh, man. And it was almost Colin Trevorrow.
It was almost Colin. And think what you want about that. I don't know if people out there have seen Jurassic World 2, but I didn't see it, and I read the plot, and I'm glad I didn't see it.
No, I'm definitely still going to see it. I'm hearing both, so I'm not.
Do you want to hear? I'll tell you right now what happens. Ready?
No, don't do that.
So, okay. All right, then go to the next question.
Yeah. All right, we'll do the last question. The Fishmonger at Amar Hefka. So way to get your, why did you name yourself the Fishmonger? I'm not really sure, but hey, man, if your name's Amar Hefka, then I am glad that you got your handle. Yep. But your question this week was kind of crazy, man. I'm excited to see what John has to say about this because we're both going to take a stab at answering it. Rogue One did war. Solo did Western. what genre would you like to see explored in future live-action Star Wars films? I was thinking a film in the style of Kurosawa samurai movie, maybe Kenobi? Hashtag make Kenobi happen. So this guy's a Kenobi fan, and I think I think he's not alone. Like, not in the fact that he's like a Kenobi fan, but I think in the sense that people think about this movie and they go, ooh, like a samurai kind of, I don't want to say Western, but like alone, like in the desert and like meditation and peaceful. And we got a little bit of that Kenobi in Rebels, you know? That's final Kenobi versus Maul fight. It was very samurai driven, very like old samurai film, probably Kurosawa, and a lot of the inspiration that is involved with that. John, do you have an answer for this?
Yeah, I'm not sure how they would execute it, but I would love to see a detective, like a mystery Star Wars story.
Oh, that's a good one, man. Because I'll tell you, like I think going back to my aesthetic thing, I don't really have like a solid answer for this, because anytime I ever say something, I'm like, horror? No. Comedy? No. Action? Well, it's already kind of action. You know, like everything I think about, I'm like, I'm not really sure, but I really like your answer, man. Mystery?
Oh, thanks, man. So imagine if we didn't know that Galen Erso was the one who sabotaged the Death Star, and they were trying to find out who did it, and all of a sudden at the end they find out, oh my god, it's this guy, Galen Erso. He helped us design this thing. Whoa, there's the big mystery reveal. Like, not like a Scooby-Doo goofiness kind of way, but more like a Poirot, like Agatha Christie style, like Murder on the Orient Express, that kind of stuff, where you're trying to find out, like, what's going on here? Can I trust that person? Did they just lie to him? What's going on here?
Yeah,
but in a Star Wars fun way.
So here's the thing that I think would be really cool. Every movie that's ever done this has been like, oh, let's go on the hero's adventure, and they try to figure out like what's going, like why are there bad things happening? And then it turns out when there's a plot twist, one of the heroes is actually like a traitor, and he's like on the other side, right? We've seen that a lot in movies. What would be really cool is if they told a movie from the perspective of like Galen Erso, in the sense that it's an Empire-driven movie, and we don't know who it is that's leaking plans to the rebels, and like we're trying to pick our villain maybe, and then the end of the movie is the person revealing himself as the good guy and saying like, no, this is bad. You can't do this. Push the button, blows himself up and everything that they've been working on. You know what I mean? Like that could be like a really cool, different storytelling, Rogue One-ish tragedy. You know what I mean? Our heroes maybe don't make it out, but I think it could be cool to rewatch that movie and be like, oh man, now that I know he's the hero, like let me rewatch these scenes with like the perspective of what we know his real intentions are and stuff. Like,
or make it a serial, and make that another live action series on the streaming service, like a 10 episode, like you're building up to that moment. You're trying to figure out like who was the person, and then you're watching all 10 episodes, and the final one gives you that pop, that last reveal, and it's more like a series. So and then like season 2, like it's him and he's still alive, and you're like, what? How is he still alive? Exactly.
Like the way season 1 ended, you know? So so we both, I took your answer. We ran with it a little bit. I don't have a separate answer, but I'm gonna hope that qualifies as both of us answering for the fishmonger.
The fishmonger. That was a good question, though. That was fun. That was a cool one.
Well, that's it for Ask the Resistance. I did one, you did one, we both did one, and we're going to wrap it up for this episode. You got anything else to say?
No, just keep sending us questions, though, because they're fun.
Yeah, I actually had a person send me a question today, just like straight up, like on their own, and I answered it, and then I was like, you know, if you ever want us to answer questions, hashtag Ask the Resistance.
Yep.
And we're going to see it. And we're likely, I don't want to say likely, but like there's a good chance it could end up on the show, and you'll have like multiple people talking about it. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun. In addition to doing that, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. We have some exciting stuff coming up on our YouTube channel, in addition to the stuff you've already seen, which is like Lacey's Star Wars Newsnet weekly news show. And again, Lacey will be back next week. You can find her at Lacey Gillerin on Twitter. And I'm not going to say anything else about Kylo Ren. I'll let her get back to that. This was a very Kylo Ren free episode, I got to say, James, but I'm sure she'll come in double fold with it next week. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed on all those formats so you're aware when our episodes post and our contests. Head to our store too, tpublic.com/user/resistance broadcast. We have a ton of designs on there. James made most of them. They're so cool. I have picked up a bunch myself. I love our new one, the Darth Maul face. It's just so simple but so badass. Like, he's such a badass, man.
Yeah, so I actually have a friend, like, I'm sure a lot of the listeners haven't actually gone over to and checked it out yet, or they've been thinking about it. They've heard us talk about it a number of times. But I actually had a friend of mine at work, someone I talk to every day. They said they finally went over there and looked at their shirts, and he was like, "Dude, that Maul shirt is awesome." You know what I mean? So I'm actually hoping he buys it. That would be pretty cool too, to see a coworker wearing one of our shirts. But I think I don't know. I think if you haven't gone over to the store yet, check it out. Like, we've got a lot of character shirts. We've got some fun shirts we've got podcast centric shirts that say the Resistance broadcast in a number of different formats. So if you want to rep the podcast in that manner, you can do that. Or if you just want to, we also want to kind of cater to the crowd that's like, I don't really want a brand name on my clothing. So like a typical like Han or Chewie or Falcon shirt, there's some punny ones as well. So if you guys want to go check those out, punny and funny. So
definitely check them out. There's about 30 or so designs on there, and they're not just t-shirts, stickers, mugs. I'm literally holding a mug right now. It's a Resistance broadcast Han Solo mug. So a lot of cool stuff.
Notebooks, laptop cases.
Yeah. Also, of course, go to our website, StarWarsNewsNet.com every day. That's where you're going to get a lot of the stories that we talk about. And that's the best way for you to be updated on all of the news going on in that galaxy far, far away. Now, James, where can people find you?
Well, I'm mostly on Twitter, but I'm also on Instagram, and you can find me on both of those platforms at Myra Trunks, MIRAHTRUNKS. That is a Dragon Ball reference. Character Trunks is a character who comes from the future, and the word Myra is the Japanese for future, so future Trunks. This is probably one of the most... this is a time that I've probably gone into the most detail over that. So,
well, that's because you are anti-disestablishmentarianism kind of guy.
Yes.
Right. And you guys can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and writing and editing over at StarWarsNewsNet.com. Stick with us. Enjoy your week. Hopefully we made your Monday or Tuesday or whenever you caught up with this one easier. But we are going to be back here on Thursday, where just James and I again. We're going to take that question that was asked to us about, did episode 8 affect episode 9's writing? And we're going to run with it. We're going to have a long discussion about it, and we're going to introduce a new segment too, which we're excited to tell you about, which is a little tweak on what we've been doing with Is the Force With You. So keep it right here, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you on Thursday morning right here on the Resistance broadcast.